I think you have to work with every element, and each element has to be given the due respect and the due uh, importance, which is ultimately going to stay in the frame forever. Hi, my name is Muzaffar Ali, and we are discussing my film Umrao Jaan.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. So my name's Nimi, and I write for a independent film body called Directors Notes, and we very much focus on the director's perspective of storytelling and balancing the technical aspects with how you unpack the emotional story. So I have lots to ask you. I'm going to try and be focused about it, but so much that I want to talk about. It would be just, great to hear the background to how the film came to be back 45 years ago and how it landed on your table and why you said yes initially.
All films are like part of one's dream. You were looking at trying to create something out of your life, out of your memory, out of your imagination. And then you are also deeply connected to a culture, a milieu, a place, and a time which you like to portray. And somehow also the ethos and, and the kind of ambiance of the canvas. So after Gaman, this seemed like a very obvious choice to make a film on Lucknow classic novel by Mirza Hadi Ruswa and convert that into a film. And it was very exciting because it was dealing with my own city. It was dealing with my city, which had actually, in a way, no cultural continuity records left in terms of cinema.
Mhm.
There was nothing, anything like this that had happened before, except Mr. Ray had done a film called Shatranj Ke Khiladi, and Mr. Venegal had done a film called Junoon. But this was something different. It was basically a bioepic on a courtesan, which has never been attempted. So when I hit upon it, I thought, okay, this is it. This is my calling. So I got the book and I started reading it, and
Yeah.
that's how it began.
And how did you go about understanding the world of 1840? You're in 1981, and what did you do to immerse yourself in the world?
Part memory, part nostalgia, part imagination, part actually some tangible things, some traces of things that have been left behind. And then basically it was all, things in a way hadn't changed that much in terms of the feudal culture of Lucknow is concerned. Like my mother lived very much like the way women of that time must have lived. So it was not very difficult, but obviously it was a conscious effort of how to uh, design the production, how to create everything from nothing. And that's how it sort of started to happen.
And so onto design, it's a good segue into that. The cinematography is obviously incredible. It's very layered. It's very textured. I know you've talked a lot about bringing in all your different art forms because you are obviously a painter, a writer, a poet. How how did you how did you bring that textile and sort of that depth of storytelling? I know you sketched the whole thing before
I
you
think
went.
a painter has a very fertile imagination, and a painter can take you back in time. It can take you into a style which is unusual and rare and very stylized. So that way, being a painter, I knew how to converse with colors, light, shade, and I was never a poet, but I was definitely very highly poetry driven, which came in very useful because the whole character of the the film of Umrao Jaan is all about a poet and how she develops her mind through her passion for poetry. So poetry came to my inspiration and rescue and help and everything. And then obviously music was very much part of my, vocabulary. I love music and I came from a region where music was very special. Lucknow, Awadh, it was the land of Wajid Ali Shah, the land of Ghazal and Tumri. So obviously I had a pretty strong approach to all these elements which became part of the film and which became the film's forte.
Yeah. And because you started in advertising, which kind of makes me feel slightly better, because so did I, and come from a marketing background. Did any of that did that world help or hinder or no difference to how
I
you
think
approach?
marketing is always a good thing to have up your sleeve because it makes you understand a product, it makes you understand the market, it makes you understand how marketable your product is and how to position it. All these things make a lot of difference in marketing. And I was basically in advertising. So when I was working with Air India, and Air India at that time was a very interesting, very innovative airline. It was not a very big airline compared to BA and the American Airlines, but it had a small network, but it's a very strong network and a very special way of appealing to the people. It had this very interesting Maharaja,
Mhm.
which became the symbol, which made everybody interested. What is this guy? What's he trying to say?
Yeah.
Is he making sense? And people found him very intelligent and naughty and attractive. And that was the mind of my immediate boss, Mr. Kuka, Bobby Kuka. So that way, I think Air India helped me to look at uh, what I was doing in a very global way, because we were a global product. I think probably at that time, the only global product. Air India was India and India was Air India. That was the
Yeah, interesting.
situation. Now everything is everything. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was always taught to think of because I'm a strategist in the marketing world. So, my whole reason for being is to understand audiences, people, and how you want them to feel. Um, do you think that you want the film to have the same impact today as it had 45 years ago? And has it got the same role to play in culture?
in fact, it's more because human beings don't change.
Yeah.
And this film appeals to a certain very vulnerable dimension of femininity, which gets more and more acute with time
Mhm.
and as things progress. So I think the strength of the film becomes something to reckon with because of its nostalgia and the fact that it was made with a kind of a depth and a timeless approach to art.
Yeah.
Today, what happens is everything is in a hurry. Everything is divided too much between people. So nobody sort of penetrates deep enough into the creative thought. Like the time we took to create the lyrics was not normal. It was literally growing into the character,
Yeah.
speaking through the character, verses that were very deep and which had a very strong human cadence. So that way, I think the depth that went into the creation of each element
Yeah.
was very uh, was time taking and that's what is paying off today.
Yeah.
Had done that film in a bit of a hurry or anything, it may not have been the same thing. And also, the film was done in a very organic way. It was not done out of flamboyance. I think films that are done, and it was done very, very simply, very starkly, and very authentically,
Yeah.
playing with light and cloth and fabric and faces and eyes and all that. So it took you into another zone which makes the film or film very memorable. So the
Yeah.
idea of create something which is memorable. That's what my whole approach as a painter has been, to create images which are which have a very strong correlation of color and light and form and movement.
Yeah.
So that's what I think helps me and makes me do something the way I can dream of doing.
Yeah, I mean, the creative process, as far as I've been understanding it, has been incredible. I read a quote somewhere that said that you would sometimes wait for the light to be just right, even if it meant holding everyone for hours, just because that would have the right look on maybe Rekha's face or
I think you have to work with every element, and each element has to be given the due respect and the due uh, importance, which is ultimately going to stay in the frame forever.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels like the way that you shot, and the way that you captured and sometimes framed, um, especially Rekha's face and Wara's face, as we start to see her, I guess, intellectual liberation and maybe something she wouldn't have got if she hadn't been kidnapped, that juxtaposed with her physical entrapment, bird in a gilded cage, essentially. I'd love to just hear about how you guys talked about the cinema work and the how you captured the shots, because sometimes it does really feel like you're framing her to look like she's in a cage.
Well, she was in a cage, but she was also uh, a woman with a mind.
Yeah,
That mind was essentially free.
yeah,
It was a very stimulating mind. It was a feeling mind. It was when she came to terms with that cage,
yeah.
in a very, nice way, and she
Used
at
it.
the end of it goes back to the cage.
Yeah. But does she
So
go?
the word going back to a cage is a very interesting
Yeah.
uh, image.
It sort of feels like at the end, I know she doesn't have her family and Lucknow is in a mess after the siege and everything, but it did feel to me at the end, and just even the sense of her facial expression, that there was a sense of freedom there, because she's still, yes, she's shamed in society and she doesn't have a set role, but she has that intellectual freedom. What are we meant to feel about her at the end, and what were you trying to capture with that mirror shot?
I think she came to terms with herself.
Yeah,
She understood how she could face life, how she could look at life, and obviously, when there's nothing is written in stone, but it's just you're leaving a note lingering on.
yeah,
It's an abstract note which go, make keeps making you think, okay, this is her.
yeah,
And this is what might have happened. But you definitely bring her to a point where you feel that she's can be herself.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And very one good thing is that it speaks for the strength of that culture. Culture is very, in spite of the fact that she's a courtesan,
yeah,
there is a there is a kind of a respect for art in that culture.
yeah, absolutely,
And the respect for art is, I think, visible right through,
yeah.
at every point, and that is how she comes to be seen.
Yeah. And you almost get a sense of her internal empowerment, even in her body language and her facial expressions, as she learns and becomes free to write and express and dance in a way that starts to feel a little bit on her own terms, even though she's still trapped.
Yeah,
How,
because
how did you capture that body language?
see, the thing is that that's the advantage of being in Lucknow, from Lucknow, of Lucknow. There are certain art forms that have evolved in Lucknow, and one very, very interesting, powerful art form is
Hmm.
the Kathak dance.
Yeah,
Now, the Kathak dance has a huge vocabulary of human emotions,
yeah,
separation to waiting to union to a number, just like poetry itself.
yeah,
So that dance gave me the the vocabulary to play with her eyes, like,
Yeah.
if you look at the film, it's all her eyes,
It is.
eyes are doing all the entire job,
Yeah.
and that those eyes without a Kathak training or a Kathak guidance
Yeah.
or Kathak mindset becomes useless. She can be, she can. I mean, it's a totally choreographed tragedy. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You totally get it through the dance, and I think the first meeting of
There was a lady, Kumudni Lakhia, very a very very big dancer in India. She designed my. Actually, there were a lot of layers of this very fine artists who came together to create this character in the film. And obviously, I had to work with each person layer by layer, one at a time, and then the whole thing coming together. I think that's the wonderful thing about making a film. You can do all this.
yeah. From a technical aspect, what was one of the most difficult things to capture, or one of the most difficult scenes, or one of the biggest struggles that you had?
I think scenes like which demand a lot of money, extravaganza, that kind of production value, those are always very difficult because this exodus I tried to create was with absolutely no money and just in a few hours. So if it was done in today's time in the West today, you could have created a huge spectacle. Right? So I think these high production value things, I mean, I didn't have the means to go down on them. But today, if you see cinema, people pay for that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
spend hugely on that.
Yeah.
The result may be little, not that much, but they value that result to add to the whole mosaic of the production mounting.
Yeah.
But I had that limitation of money. So we tried to squeeze everything into something very, you know, elegant and sometimes not one dimensional, but I would say very Spartan.
Yeah. And all the characters, all the ones that have a central role, none of them feel at all one-dimensional because you get a sense of all of their internal struggle, that they know that they're all a victim of circumstance, and a lot of what they're doing probably isn't right, but it is where they all are, and they just kind of have to do it. And the sort of the shame that they feel for either who they are or how they're acting, I think you really capture that as a subtext. And how did you
I
direct?
think firstly, the actors were all immersed in that culture.
Mhm.
They were immersed in their predicament. They were immersed in the interrelationship of characters. And characters were not one dimensional, only the production values, I'm saying, with compromise,
Yeah,
slightly compromised. But the characters were fully charged. They were, each one was bringing a lot to the table.
yeah,
And I think all the characters were added to the build-up of this girl.
yeah. How did you get them into character? What's your process to get them and keep them there, right, over something like this?
I mean, you get nice thinking, intelligent people, and you immerse them in the milieu. I mean, I think today in the West, there are actors who'll bring about a lot of um, s- psychological nuances in situations and characters. The world is not lacking in that kind of talent. I think, especially Britain abounds in that.
Yeah. Did any of
But
them were any of them
today,
method?
what has happened is that people, before their time, they erase the story written on their face. They start doing all kinds of things. So they don't immerse themselves into creating new stories on their face.
Yeah,
So this is what Umrao Jaan did. It probably helped this character to become the story that I wanted her to become.
yeah. What kind of sort of back then technical equipment did you have? What sort of cameras was it, and how did you?
No, but there's simple reflexes. They were not very. highly complicated cameras, but they were professionally the right cameras of that time.
Yeah.
We, sometimes we used the old-fashioned Mitchell in the studio, which was a very elaborate camera, but it created nice rock steady frames.
Yeah. And in terms of the costume design, I mean, the costumes feel like they were characters in themselves. How did you who did you work with, and how did you think about costume?
Actually, the costumes I took the help of my ex-wife, Subhashini, but my whole philosophy was to have costumes that speak, that
Yeah.
have gone through time, colors that have faded, and everything that's like part of a scene. So going according to seasons, according to the time of the day, according to the situation. So costumes were really for me, the most tactile and exciting part. I love textiles,
Yeah.
and I love to work with textiles, and I love embroidery and craft. So it was great fun, I think. I would love to do anything in costumes. In fact, I was doing this film in Kashmir, Habba Khatun, called Zuni, and the costumes were being designed by Mary McFadden. So it was a whole costumes, a big immersive trip.
Yeah, yeah, you feel it. You absolutely feel it when you watch it. Um, and everyone has talked to you a lot about how sort of quiet relative to Bollywood a film it is, and the stillness that you tried to capture. I mean, that was the reality of the time, right? You weren't just trying to do that to be anti something. That was just the reality of the situation and the setting. And talk to me a bit about the sound design. I guess I'd love to hear.
See, the sound was limited to, again, what you saw. So it was like, on one hand, the physical sound of what you saw, and the other is the cerebral sound of what you feel. So,
Mm.
like, for instance, the rustling of silk and movement of bodies, that was really the most significant part of the sound design. And then, obviously, creating music patterns which would work in different times of the different stages of the film. So the sound design was really carried off from one musical zone into another musical zone into another musical zone, following the songs and the ghazals we have introduced in association with the character. So some uh, melodies which were associated with their romance.
Yeah,
Now, when the romance situation comes either happening or in nostalgia, that sound really magnifies the feeling.
yeah, absolutely.
So sound was really, I mean, that way. Besides that, you have to do when you do the re-recording of the whole film, then you realize how much detailing sound takes.
Yeah, and it really captures the emotional journey of the character, I think. Um, if I mean, this film with the re-release and especially going global now is, it's going to be introduced to a new generation of people who have not watched it before. I hadn't watched it before. I was born the year it came out. So if someone I know, if someone asks you what the film's about, what would you say? There's so much, and I'd just love to hear your log line, I guess.
I think it's a cultural cerebral journey, and now once it's digital, sky's the limit.
Yeah,
And also it's now it's a rare film. People want to. It's not available on any net uh, platform. So till it reaches there, there'll be a lot of demand built on
yeah, absolutely.
around this film.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this film has been sort of brought to life in several layers. Every with the changing of the technology from television to the cassettes and the VHS and the DVDs. Now it's coming into the digital zones. Now we will see what happens. I think it's going to be, it will be infectious. It is an infectious product.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. As someone who's watched it, I'd read about its legend, but I hadn't watched it until
So there's one film, some people have seen it hundreds of times.
yeah, yeah.
Something,
Did it tell you it was gonna make a mark on the world? Is that right?
no, I knew it's getting into people's bloodstream somehow or the other. That you can feel as you're going through. And I think every film has a journey, every film has a kind of a feeling, and that feeling you create or you induct as you're trying to create the film. So, in fact, even when I was reading the book, I recorded the whole book on a cassette at that time, and I used to put it in my car and was going to office and back. I used to almost finish the book in two rounds. I could finish the book. So as I heard the book, it started creating layers of nostalgia.
Yeah,
And I realized that these layers of nostalgia is going to be the the foundation of my
yeah,
design. And that's, I think, very important for a film or a filmmaker to arrive at that.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And 45 years later, how are you feeling?
I feel the same. I feel
Same.
good. Feel good. It's a. I mean, it's you feel refreshed. You feel gratified.
Yeah.
I mean, to
Mate,
do something which is honored and respected is a good feeling.
you've reminded me why I wanted to get into filmmaking in the first place, no matter how difficult it is. So, you're gonna shape generations of storytelling to come, I think. Um, can
I
I
think
just
the only way to do it is to get under the skin of a character
yeah,
and get your ambience right, and then there's no looking back. You don't get into and especially, if you can get people who have a very strong potential of telling a story through their eyes and face, then you're home free because they'll bring out so much more than you ever imagined.
yeah. What are you doing next apart from celebrating this? Am I allowed to ask you?
No,
Or
I'm a painter and I keep painting all the time.
yeah,
So one big advantage. And then we do this festival called Jahan Khosrow, which is a Sufi music festival. We've been doing it for 25 years. So my direction is more into Sufi thought. And I've been working on a script on Rumi also. And I've
amazing.
done 23 scripts of that. I've also done sketches of the whole film. But that's a very, very ambitious project, and you need a bigger support base to do it. I think
Yeah,
beyond the normal film industry kind of mm, to approach something like that because it's again a risk. You're
yeah,
dealing with a character who's it's a simple journey from the mind to the heart.
yeah, absolutely. It
So
is.
to take that, you take somebody on that journey is not a joke.
Yeah.
If you have a very great actor you get to work with, I've got the best script I can think of.
Amazing.
Maybe in England I'll find somebody.
Yes, well, I'm sure I'd love to read your script. Um, I'm really conscious of time, so just two things lastly, and then I will let you go. Um, Obviously, everyone's talked to you a lot about how you're pushing filmmaking, or have throughout the whole of your incredible legacy so far, pushed the representation of India and Indian cinema, and I think there's directors who are following in your footsteps, like Neeraj Goyan or Near Rohan Kandoy, who are doing these incredible independent films that sometimes don't feel like they're supported enough from a distribution perspective. What do you think needs to happen systemically in India to support the kind of storytelling that represents India, not just big Bollywood bling?
I think India has to be positioned globally.
Yeah,
India has to be seen as a world market. Ideas from India have to be universal. and the art of telling the story has to grow into to meet that kind of demand of India becoming global. In fact, that's what I'm doing with the film on Kashmir Zuni. So I think that is the whole thing, and then I think we need actors to also become global actors.
Yeah,
Once when they're restricted to India, their whole vocabulary changes. So I think India needs to have a global vocabulary. Because Indians are global. We are talking as if we are citizens of the world. We're not talking as if
yeah,
I'm from India and you're from Britain or something. We
yeah,
we we, we are looking at ourselves as global people.
yeah,
And for us, the whole world is one.
yeah,
So the fact that India is India, India has a lot to offer.
yeah,
As a philosophy, it has this culture of compassion and multiculturalism is there. So all these very fine qualities we have, which we should not lose at any cost. Because if we lose that, then we become little barking dogs. And
yes, I agree. I agree. And human nature is universal. Thank you so much for your time and your insight and your incredible work. It's been an absolute privilege to talk to you. And I
thank
hope
you.
when you're in London, yeah, absolutely.